What's up, everybody? Let me fix this real quick. It's showing the wrong monitor. That's okay. We can change it. There we go. Okay. Happy Friday. Hopefully you're all having a good day so far. The goal for today is to chat about a couple of things. One, because we need to talk about the sculpt a little bit and what is expected of you in the next couple weeks. So let's pull up the canvas page really quickly and see what's happening here. Hello, hello. Let's pull this up really quick because I know we bumped one assignment a little bit, and I think we can look at bumping the final sculpt 1 week if we need to. What happens is if we bump the sculpt, it takes a week off of retopo. So that's why I want to talk retopo today, because some people may already be done with the sculpt. So we'll see where we're at. If this decides to let me log in. Hello, hello. Good to see ya. Let's try that one more time. Hold on a second. It's not working for my watch. Let me see if I can find my phone. Okay, that's better. For some reason it wasn't working on my watch. Let's see here. So let's get into Canvas. Let's check this out here. So we have the final sculpt being due today. So here's the thing. What I can do is bump the final sculpt to the 7th. If people need a little bit more time to finish their sculpt, I can bump the sculpt to the 7th of April. And I'm okay with that. It just takes a week off of being able to do technically a week out of your retopology assignment, but we're going over retopo today. I don't really need to talk anymore about sculpting. We went through the final sculpt video last week. So, we'll talk about retopo today. I will change the bust final to the 7th for you guys. That's fine. If people need a little bit more time, I get it. So we'll change that to the 7th. And then the retopo I'm going to keep on the 14th. And then we'll have 2 weeks to work on the paint. So really there's a week or so of like fluff time in here. That's okay. So I'm not super worried about that, but just know that you need to try to keep yourself on pace for what's happening, right? So today we're going over retopo. If you're still haven't even started your sculpt, you're behind. So make sure you're keeping up with that stuff. And then we'll get into Retopo today. There's a couple things I want to wrap up with this Chewbacca head, right? I'm going to do like a small extrusion here for his bandolier, and then I'm going to chop it off, and then I'm going to export him out. So we'll go through that really quickly, and then we're going to talk Retopo today. So once I export him out, we're going to talk about how to export these out into pieces so that it works properly. And then we'll talk about starting Retopo and all the different tools for retopology inside of Maya. Okay. So just a couple things here that I want to go over. So the first thing first is to do the extrusion on this bandolier, if I can get it to work properly. So I am going to merge all of these things together and then Dynamesh them together really quick. So let's do that. Let's actually Dynamesh them together right now. So I'm going to take this, I'm going to save first, file, save. We'll save this as Chewbacca block out. That's fine. So I'm going to Dynamesh all these together after I merge them all. So I'm going to go to merge and then merge down. Okay, so now this whole piece, his bandolier, is here. I'm going to rename this. I'm going to go through and rename all these as well. I don't know how to spell that. Bandolier. Yeah, that's right. Bandolier. There we go. Okay, this is bottom teeth, so let's rename all these too, just for good convention here. Bottom teeth. Let's rename these to top teeth. This is his shoulders. Okay, I'm going to merge the eyes down too. Okay, cool. So for the bandolier piece here, I'm going to take, or try to take, a good chunk of this and then try to do that extrusion the best I can. So let's go like this, maybe, with this bandolier. We're going to reset it really fast. So unlock it. Lock it. I'm going to straighten the bandolier really quickly. As good as I can. We'll turn off everything else. So we've got the bandolier. So what I want to do is try to run like a mask like this through it. It doesn't need to be crazy clean because like if you look at the reference for it, it's not insane. But if I can just get that going right there, then I'm going to inverse it, and then I'm going to extrude this a little bit. Just kind of pull this out. I'm not quite sure if that's working exactly how I want it to, but let's see. Let's jump back a little bit here. Kind of hoping that's what I was going for. Not quite. Wonder if I just do like a go to the masking here and then sharpen this really quick. I mean, that is what I want, but let's see. B, M, E. I can. Okay, that's pretty close to what I was trying to do there. And then I should be able to clean it up once I pull the mask off of here. I don't need that much smoothing intensity. Should be able to get in here and clean this up a little bit. I could also Z-remesh it too. Let's see if I do that, what happens. Let's try the Z-remesher on here and see what it does. Usually that will clean it up a little bit, and then I can just divide it up. Didn't do a great job. Let's go back here. Trying to keep some more polygons in there. It's a little better. Not much though. If I Dynamesh. Dynamesh didn't do a great job either. Kind of worked. Now I wonder if ZRemesher would do a better job. Let's see. We'll run it and see what happens. It's going very slowly. It's this little green bar at the top. Hopefully it works. What I'm trying to do is just get rid of some of this weirdness that's happening here, but if I can't get it to work, there's other ways to go about making this work, but yeah, it's not doing exactly what I want there. Might be a cleaner way to do this. Let's see. I'm just gonna look at this reference really quick again. Yeah, it is like that. So how do I want to do that? I think I have maybe a slight idea. Let's see here. Something like that, and then maybe I can divide that up. That. Maybe I can do enough with a couple cubes and try to line it up. Then I can Dynamesh it all together. Good, how are you doing? Good to see you. We're just trying to fix this last little piece of my Chewbacca, and then we're going to export him out of here. So, I'm hoping I can get this to do what I want it to do here. which I think I got it, but last one here. I'm gonna try to rotate this a little bit too. That is more or less what I was looking for out of that. Then what I can do is merge this ring down. Merge it down with the other one. Merge it down with the other one. Merge it down with the other one. Okay. Then I should be able to take that whole thing. Kind of squeeze it a little bit. Just what I wanted. Perfect. And then I can Dynamesh this together. Then, now that it's Dynameshed, I can divide it back up. And I can go through there with the pinch tool a little bit later. Function requires the mesh to be partially hidden. How do you hide a portion of your mesh? That's a good question. I'm not sure why it's saying that. Okay, I'm going to cut off a couple pieces of this deal here just to try to knife it down and make it a little cleaner. So, let's go back to draw here. Go to this one. Delete the lower out of here. Knife that off. Knife this other side off over here. That's nice and clean. Okay. Now I'm going to take all my stuff and turn it all back on. That's odd. I'm not sure. It's just practice. That's all it is. That's all it is. Just practice. I'm going to merge the two layers of the bandolier together. I think, yep. Then we're going to reset this, move it back over, kind of readjust his bandolier now. Okay, and then I'm going to knife off the bottom of this thing. So let's go Control Shift, and we're just going to knife this off. Boom. Except for I don't want to cut all of that off. One more time. Just not knifing it right where I want to. Let's try. Let's turn perspective off for a second. There we go. Now I can turn perspective back on. So the next thing I'm going to do is, just for fun, I'm going to put him on like a little pedestal just so I can hide some of the garbage that was there. So I'm going to put him on like a little pedestal bust, right? So we've got his bandolier in there. He's looking pretty good. I'm just, like I said, I'm going to put a little like almost like he's on like a little stand, right? And you don't have to do this, but I think it really tops it off and makes it look nice. So let's go append here. I'm going to do like a cylinder, and I'm going to bring the cylinder out. Wherever my cylinder is, maybe. There we go. I'm gonna do something like this. Doesn't have to be giant, just enough to encapsulate him. And I think I'm going to duplicate this, shrink one down, do kind of like a two-step thing. But I'm going to smooth one of these first. So first things first is I'm going to take, this is a new tool that we haven't really talked about a bunch. This is called the Z Modeler. This allows you to cut in edge loops inside of ZBrush, which can be helpful, but it can also be really confusing. So I tend to not show it right off the bat, but you can cut in edge loops similar to how you can cut an edge loop in Maya. Come on now. This does not want to let me do it there. And I'm going to smooth these out. So geometry, we'll divide these up. Just really smooth them out. Same thing with the bottom one. Just make it look nice. I'll merge these down, and then I'll stick Chewbacca just kind of on there like that, right? So we've got our bust kind of sitting on a little stand now, so it looks like it's meant to be that way, right? And we're good to get him out of here, export him into Maya. Okay, so something like this. All right, I'm going to export out all these different pieces. First, I'm going to save, right, because we've done a lot of work now. So let's save this out. So we'll call this final. So the next step here that we need to talk about is getting this out of ZBrush and into Maya so that we can start our retopology process, right? We've got final sculpt done, but right now I'm sitting at 6.8 million polygons. That's a lot of polygons. We can't really import that into a game and feel good about it, right? So we need to bring it into Maya to retopologize, which means we're going to bring this high level mesh that we've worked on, right? We sculpted, we've really bumped up the polygon limits here. We're pulling that into Maya to redraw essentially all of the polygons over the top of this model. And then from there, we bake inside of a program like Substance Painter. We can bake the high topology mesh onto the low topology mesh, right? So we're taking the detail of this 6.8 million polygon sculpt that we've done, and we're baking it down essentially into something that's maybe, you know, 10 to 15K polygons, maybe even a little bit more. 20, 30 could be okay too. But that's the idea, right? When you have so many different pieces going into these video games, if you have every single model you're putting into the engine is millions and millions of polygons, it's expensive and it's going to bog it down. It's not going to run very well, right? That's poorly optimized. So if we can bring that 6.8 million polygon mesh into Maya, retopologize it down to 20K polygons, that seems a lot better, right? So that's the process. In order to do that, we need to export these out in such a way that we can pull them into that other software easily and manipulate them easily in order to draw that topology over the top, right? I don't want to keep and export this whole head with the base into Maya and have to try to draw my polygons for all of this, right? So what I want to do is kind of one piece at a time export this all out. I don't mind exporting out the tongue as a separate mesh. I mean, we can keep it for now, but if I can get in there and do all the topology for this stuff, and then the tongue maybe ends up being a separate piece, that's fine with me. So I'm going to rename this one so I can remember what everything is as I start exporting out, because I'm going to make a file structure where I have a folder that has all my high polygon meshes that I'm bringing into Maya, and then all my low polygon meshes that I'm exporting out of Maya, so that when we go into Substance Painter, we have both files and we have that ability to pull them both in for that baking process. Okay. So, let's rename the tongue here. Tongue U. Okay. And then I'm going to rename this base piece here as well. Let's rename this to Sculpt Base or something. I really don't care what it's called, but I need it for my ADD to keep stuff organized. Okay. So the first one I'm going to export out is just the head and the shoulders. I think we can keep the head and the shoulders together. So technically I could merge the head and the shoulders at this point. I'm going to merge them down. Okay. So that can be one piece. I'm fine with that right now. So I'm going to export this out. This is 2 million polygons. That's okay. But understand that these file sizes are going to be a little bit bigger than you're normally used to, right? But I'm going to export this out. We're going to create a folder here on my desktop that's called exported models, right? Something that you can easily find these. And we'll bring this in here, create a new folder here, and we're going to call these high polygon meshes, okay? High poly mesh. And we're going to pull in and save all of our high poly meshes in here. So I'm going to go head, and I'm going to do an underscore and call it high for now, just so I'm keeping these really naming conventions is not something that's strictly uniform. But if you understand where things are, it's going to make your life a lot easier when you start having to pull in high poly versus low poly when you're trying to search through your file structure to find stuff, right? So I'm saving out my high polygon head right now. So let's export that out. Might take a couple seconds. The green bar will go across the top as it's exporting, right? Let us know when it's done. Cool. Okay, let's move on. Let's export out the eyes. That's not a huge deal, but we'll do it. We'll export these. We'll call these eyes underscore high. We'll save those out. That's fine. Next thing I want to do is the teeth, and I'm actually going to merge the teeth together as their own things. So let's merge those down. We'll just call them teeth in general. So we're going to just call this teeth, rename to just teeth. We're going to export these out. So we're going to say teeth high. We're just going down the list, right? Next thing I need to do here, probably the tongue. Let's just divide the tongue one more time. Maybe, I don't know. How high is that in there? That's plenty good. I think it's totally fine. Okay, let's export this. Say tongue high. Okay. Let's grab the bandolier next. I'm going to export this one. Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Dominic. We'll see you. Okay, I'm gonna export the base now to really. I don't know if we need this as a high poly mesh. We can pull it into Maya and keep it super low, but we'll just export it out for now. Okay. Okay, so I think we've exported out everything now. So now that we have that done, I'm going to pull up Maya really quickly here. Let's open this up. We could probably close out of Z. I'm going to leave Z open for just a minute and make sure that we have everything exported. But we can get into Maya now for sure. Not love these... find a different portion of this. Okay, cool. Maya is slowly opening, but that's okay. So what we're gonna do is get all of those meshes. Excuse me. Thanks, Siri. All of those meshes exported into Maya now. And then there's a process where we can create live surfaces inside of Maya that we can then use the quad draw tool, which I'm going to show you. That's a little interesting to work with at first, but because you've used some of the other tools in Maya, it shouldn't be too difficult to get a grasp over. But there's some hotkeys and things that are different from the normal hotkeys inside of Maya. So we'll talk about those in just a minute. As soon as my Maya decides it wants to open up and actually do something. It's just taking its sweet time, huh? There we go. Come on. Okay, cool. So let's create a new file here. And we're just going to slowly import all of these meshes, right? So I'm going to go File, Import, right here. And I should be able to find those meshes, exported models, my high poly meshes. I'll bring in the head first. Just make sure it works. If it gives me a hard time, there's a couple things we can do. So it brought it in as two separate pieces, which is okay for right now. I don't necessarily love that it did that, and I can show you how to fix that inside of ZBrush so that it doesn't do that to us. Let's take a look really quick. Inside of Z, what you can do when you're exporting is you can take a look at this and look at the poly groups And right now it's showing that I've got 2 poly groups, right? I've got this weird lime green group and the yellow group. If I go down to poly groups down here, I can say group visible right now. And if I do that, it's going to group those together into one. Then when I re-export this out, it will export it out as one group. So let's try that really quick. It just happens when you are working with several different meshes inside of Z. So I'm going to delete this really quick out of here. And let's import that new head. My Maya is going to be dumb for a second. Give it 1 second. While I'm doing that, let's double check that all of these other ones are not multiple poly groups, because it looks like this one might be. I also looks like I need to take one of these eyes and mask this out and split this. And delete one of these. And then just duplicate this one over. I might need to re-export the eyes. Those look better now. Let's re-export the eyes too over here. Okay. Those are one poly group now, which is good. Let's double check all the other ones and just check all of our poly groupings here. The teeth are all separate poly groups. So what I'm going to do is go back down here to poly groups and go merge visible, group visible. Boom. Now the teeth are all one poly group, which is good. I can export this out. Teeth high. Cool. Let's go to the tongue, should be one group. The bandolier is probably going to be different groups, so let's group these two. So we'll go under poly groups here. We'll go group visible. Good. And then we'll export this. The base I'm not as worried about. I don't really care, because I might end up just using a Maya base, which is not a big deal. So let's import again. It's gonna be stupid again. Come on. My Maya is bugged and I don't know how to fix it. Every time I try to open anything through file, it just does not like to locate my stuff, and then it seizes up for a minute. It's a pain in the butt. Hopefully I can get this to work now. Let's go file, import. There we go. So let's do this. I think I can bring all of these in at once, maybe. Nope, it's not gonna let me do that. Let's go one at a time then. Bring in the head. The head should now be one piece when I select it. Yep, perfect. Let's do another one. Again, it's gonna be stupid, which is really annoying. So I'm gonna have to wait for all these to figure themselves out. Let's import the eyes next. Do the teeth. Do the tongue. And we'll do the bandolier. Yeah, that's probably a good idea. It's something that's been bugging me for a while now, and I've tried to uninstall and reinstall, but probably didn't do it properly. So let's see here. Import. I gotta do this again just to bring in the base. But we've brought in all of the pieces of our Chewbacca now. I'm gonna show you guys how to kind of organize this so that it works properly. Once this starts working, we can start working here. So let's go file, import. Last one to pull in is the, I did the base. Here we go. Okay, cool. So now we should have everything in here. Maya's doing a really good job of not just absolutely having a meltdown right now, which is great. So what I would like to do now is organize these things inside of Maya so that we can start doing that process of retopologization, right? So I need to create some layers here so that I can turn things on and off and not completely destroy what I've been doing. So within my channel box layer editor, I'm going to start clicking on these things and creating some layers here so that I can turn on and off objects while I'm doing quad draw and it's not completely messing me up, right? So under my channel my channel box and layer editor menu, I'm going to click create new layer and assign selected materials, right? I have the head selected, so I'm going to click this one. And then I'm going to rename this to head right here. And I'm going to call this head high, right? The same way I was doing before. And I'm going to hit save. So now I can turn on and off this head. Perfect, right? That's what we want. And this is a little bit of nightmare fuel, but that's okay. So we've done that. The next one I want to do, I'm going to click on another mesh, right? So we did the head. Let's assign a new layer. We'll double click this one. Say eyes high, right? Okay, save that. Perfect. We'll do the teeth. I'm just going through and creating a layer for each one of these things. It's just for organization purposes. You don't necessarily have to do this, but it makes your life a little bit easier when you go through and you're trying to get this all done. For some reason, that tongue is not working the way I want it to, so that's a nice thing. Let's get the bandolier in a layer here. Bandolier. So I can save that. Can do the base too. So now the nice thing is I can turn all this off. Now I have this one tongue that was being dumb. I can just delete this out and then go back to Z. Click on this tongue, see why it might be doing that to us. Then let's go to here and say, let's group these. We'll go to poly groups, so we'll say group visible on this. Then we'll re-export the tongue out. And we can re-import that back into Maya. Yeah, we can take a look at that for sure. Okay, I'm going to re-import that tongue. Just one second. Once my Maya figures itself out. Yeah, I'd be happy to go over doing some hair. No problem. There's a couple brushes I can show you guys in ZBrush that help to do some sculpted hair, and maybe I can even show you where I grabbed them from too. They're just some sculpting brushes that really help. But let's see here. So let's import, and I can show you some techniques to do sculpted hair, similar to how I did the hair on Chewbacca here. But let's go import tongue. This should work a lot better now. Now I click it, it's one mesh, which is great. So let's go tongue high here. Okay, awesome. So we are completely organized here now, which is great. And now I can start the process of quad draw. So this is a little bit of an interesting like method of modeling that's going to take a little bit to wrap your head around. And there's some really good examples to take a look at, and I'm going to show you here in a second. But when you're doing this topology, right, we want, the idea is that we're trying to get the best topology on this model that we can. We're taking this really high poly mesh, right? There's millions of polygons here. We're turning this into a much lower polygon mesh, and we're going to try to create nice clean topology for animation, 1, and 2 for UV mapping, just making everything nice and clean, right? And low poly so that it's less expensive when we import it into Engine. Okay. So for example, if I pull up some things here, we're going to look at image of face topology. Actually, we don't even do that. I have an example for you right here. This is a great example of good face topology. Okay. So what I'm going to do, actually, once I can find that again, let's go to my desktop files here. It's right here. So I'm going to upload this to the Discord for you guys. Okay. Under today's stuff. Let's go to desktop. I will grab you that file and we'll talk about this for a second. Okay. So when we're doing topology for the face, okay, it's a little bit different than what we were doing as far as our weapon models go, right? When we're doing these polygons, we need to make sure we are getting a couple of groups here, and we don't necessarily need to have all of these groups. Some of these groups could be combined a little bit, but it's showing you a good example of how topology flows through the face. So we need to have edge loops that kind of run in rings around the eyes, some sort of ring that runs around the top of the nose and underneath the chin. The nose can be kind of isolated within itself. Then we want the lips to have this ring that goes around it. And we also want to have some edge loops that kind of flow through the front of the nose and things like that. The reason we have these animation groups, one is when you're starting to push and pull that geometry to close the eyes to blink, right? Or to create different expressions on your face, right? If you have gross topology here where you've got triangles and weird angles that are not flowing through the face, right? When your animator is setting up the rig and they start moving your mesh, things are going to start breaking, right? Weird geometry errors can happen, and you get some jagginess that could be happening, right? But when you have this clean, smooth edge flow that runs through the face, when you deform it, it's going to close nice and smooth and things are going to look good, right? So as I'm doing my retopology, we'll talk about that and kind of how I set that up for those edge loops to happen, right? Chewbacca will be a little bit different than a human, but I'm going to really try to make him similar as the best I can. Okay. So I'm going to isolate everything here except for the head. So I've got my lovely head here, right, that we've been working with. I'm going to click this, and there's a little option here at the top that looks like a little magnet that says make live surface. If I click this, Now you'll notice that I can't click on this Chewbacca head anymore. This is now set to a live surface. Maya's saying, okay, you want this as a reference for your quad draw tool. So in your modeling toolkit, there's a little tool here called quad draw. And what quad draw does is allows you to create a live surface like this, and it allows you to start placing points and then holding shift once you have 4 points to create a face. And it's going to create a face right over the top of that live surface. These faces are going to stick to that live surface, okay? So that you can start creating your topology around this object. So we're building our topology, okay? The nice thing is, we can do this in symmetry, but I want to show you and tell you some hotkeys here. So quad draw, when you first click on it, if you just click anywhere on the mesh, it's going to drop a point, okay? Once you have 4 points, you can hold shift over those 4 points in the middle and then click with your left click, and that will create a face, okay? In order to create a face, you need to have 4 points, which is again in line with what we were talking about of creating quad polygons, right? We can do this in symmetry, which is great. So we can create polygons in symmetry at the same time, which allows this process to go a lot quicker, makes it a little bit easier on you as the modeler, and helps just push this process along, okay? So we're building out these polygons and drawing them right over the top of our model here, right? And when you click in the center, you'll know you clicked in the center because it won't draw 2 dots. It will make sure that you're always in the dead center. When it hits that middle point, it will drop 1 point. So, okay. So let's talk about this a little bit. We need to draw these polygons over the top of this. So you can see it's going to take a little while for you to fill in all of this space for this model, right? In order to create all these polygons. But there are some tools that can help. So as I'm drawing, let's just start with the eyes for fun really quick. So let's create that edge flow around the eyes that I was looking for, okay? And I'm going to try to do it on the inside here a little bit of the eye first. Makes it a little bit easier. Once you're in here too, so let's say you've drawn your polygon, you can hover over where you think a vertice would be and click and drag, and that will allow you to pull the vertices too. So once you've drawn that face, it's not completely finalized. You can still edit this. You can click on the edge and move the edge around too. So don't think that you're stuck once you've drawn one quad. You can keep working and it's not the end of the world. If you hold control, it's very similar to your multi-cut tool. You can cut in another edge somewhere. Okay. So I'm still drawing all of my polygons in right now. And it really does try to do its best to stick to the mesh. And so you can click and drag and pull those edges and vertices around as much as you need to. And there's a couple other things here that we can talk about, but we'll talk about them in just a second. So I'm going to try to get this edge as good as I can here to where I'm creating that crease in the eye right there. And then I may need to do a little bit of work here to create a good clean loop. but we've created that edge loop now on the inside of the eye, which is where we wanted that to end up, right? Now there's some tools that we can use. So we've talked about holding control once we've in quad draw. So we've talked about a couple of things here, right? We've talked about clicking your points. We need 4 of them. Once we have 4, we can hold shift, and that's going to create a face, right? The next thing we need to talk about is, or that we did talk about, was holding control over your edge loops, right? And then that will allow you to cut things in. If you hold control shift, that will allow you to delete edges, okay? So let's say I cut in an edge loop here and I actually don't need that. If I hold control shift, I can delete that out, right? So we've done that. The other one too is being able to extrude certain edges. So we can hold tab and it's going to go over. I think you have to do something here though. Stand. Yes. Okay. So I think by default, this is not set to extrude the whole edge. But if we do control shift, right click and go to extend and we do border, then we can hold tab over this. And when we pull out, it's going to extrude that edge out for us, right? Which can be super helpful as we start to get through and create some of the geometry that runs around the face here. There is some weirdness that can happen with that extrude. You just need to be aware of everything that's going on with your geometry here. Can create a little bit of weirdness, and you just have to kind of be the captain of that ship and recognize where things are going. Can take a little bit of time to recognize that, but once you get there, it starts to be a little bit easier. Okay. Now I've got that done. I can do some things like this where I've started to draw polygons through the face. I can say, okay, I actually need a couple more polygons here, right? In order to do this a little bit better. But see, now I've got some edge loops that I can use to create a more seamless experience through there. The next tool that is super helpful as you start doing this, you can see as I'm holding over these, I can smooth out what I've painted in, okay? And this can be really helpful as you start trying to clean up the stuff that you've drawn in, right? And you can do that by holding shift, and it's called the relax tool. And the relax tool really does create a nice clean edge for you to look at, right? Creates some nice geometry for you to use and can really help make this a lot easier. So you can hold shift and click and drag on certain areas and it will start smoothing out what you've drawn in. And the nice thing is it really tries to stick to the mesh, which is really crucial when you're trying to keep these nice clean lines around things, right? So that was with my shift key. I can use that smooth function, okay? And as I'm going through, I don't have to just keep going off. I can draw, now that I've done that, I can draw in other places, right? Okay, I'm thinking, okay, now I want to take a look at how the mouth sits here. And maybe I need to start taking a look at the mouth for a minute and trying to work this out in my brain. This is also how you can go about creating those edge loops that I showed you in that image that I sent to the Discord. So this is how you can get that topology through here in order to create those nice clean loops. Okay, so let's go here. So I'm just looking at drawing in my loop here. right? So I've created one loop, and now I can go and continue to start drawing loops through places like this, right? I can connect some pieces between here. Maybe I want to hold tab and extrude another loop out of here to account for a little bit more of that space, which is totally fine, right? I want to account for all the stuff that sits underneath here. I can start drawing in these edge loops. And I can hold that shift button again and smooth out that geometry. It really helps you make nice, clean edge flow through some of these areas, right? I'm creating nice, clean topology that's wrapping through what I'm doing here. So let's see how this ends up going here. So now I can hold shift and kind of clean up this area, right? And smooth this out. So I'm doing my best to create these areas. I can move this topology around. I can hold that shift key to clean it up. Right, once I've done that, hold tab, I can pull in to extrude, right? Maybe to cover this area around the mouth. Well, I'm trying to figure out how to make this work, right? So we've got that working. So the idea is we just continue and continue to draw all these polygons through here. But right now, if you look at that image that I've got going on, right, I'm really trying to isolate these areas, right? I've done around the mouth. I've tried my best to get that, right? I can isolate the nose as kind of its own piece. But again, I still need to make sure that I'm covering, you know, the topology that's needed for these areas. The other thing to look at too is when you're working in this type of format is the mesh. When we're baking this mesh together, it's always going to do the best it can to account and get that topology you wanted in here, right? It's going to try its hardest to do it for you, right? But if it can't account for all of the surface area, right? There's pieces of the high poly that are poking through in areas. It's gonna not bake super clean, and some of that geometry might get lost, and some of that detail might end up not looking as nice. So if we can get the geometry to not kind of stick through, right? If it's sticking through a little bit, it's okay, right? We don't need to make sure it's perfectly lined up in every scenario. But if we can get that to stick out as minimal as possible, that bake is going to end up looking lots cleaner. So maybe for that to work properly, I need to do something like this, right? And now I've got that all cooked up, and then I can start running some more topology through the face here a little bit. Getting this looking clean. I can hold shift and kind of smooth some stuff out a little bit. Right, and as I start, I can keep drawing and drawing these quads until I'm done, right? And then I just have to kind of do that with the rest of the model, and I can decide kind of where I want that to end or where I need that to stop, right? But that's all over this model, right? I need, you know, polygons that go all over this mesh. So I can start accounting for these things everywhere. But eventually I'm going to have one solid model that lines all this up that houses all of this geometry, right? That's the goal. And there may need to be more topology here for this to work. But you can kind of see how that starts to come together. And I can keep working through this, right? Depending on how much I want of this to flow around the face, around the eyes. We can come through here and smooth some of this stuff out. So we're just drawing in all this topology. It's a slow process. This is probably one of the slowest time-consuming things we've done so far in the course. Just takes a little bit of time to get used to. Going to take you a minute to go through and get this all drawn in. And you can start with bigger polygon chunks. I think the biggest thing I notice with students when they first start trying to work on retopology is they feel like they need to draw in a billion polygons at the start, and then they get so lost in the weeds that they've created a way bigger problem than needed to be. So like for instance up here, I could start drawing in some big polygons and just accounting for these, right? And then I can kind of break it down as I get further through. Maybe I need to add some more, smooth some of this stuff out, and then I figure out how to get them attached here, right? Maybe that takes something like this, connecting through here. And I can run that smooth through here. Get stuff nice and cleaned up, right? And we're just running this geometry back through the face now. Back over the top of the head. And as you start working stuff through here, maybe you decide, okay, I need some more geometry here. I need less geometry here, more geometry in this area, right? But we can always add, we can always take away. Just making it work properly. So we're pulling some of these through here. Maybe we need more geometry here to account for some of the details up in here. You can see we're just slowly drawing in polygons to account for the head here. And we just want to make sure we have enough geometry to cover all that high level detail we spent such a long time sculpting in ZBrush, right? So we just want to make sure we're accounting for all that here inside of Maya, right? While trying to keep as clean a mesh as possible. If it turns out we need more or less geometry in one area, we can always do that. Just adding more edge loops through here. But really establishing that base geometry is what makes or breaks a good retopo. So if we can make sure that all of this is clean and looks good, and we've done a good, successful retopology job, and the rest of the process isn't too bad. So making sure we've got nice clean edges through here. If all this is clean and nice when we go to do the bake, it's like so simple. This does not take much time or effort. Now I'm just wrapping around this around the back of the head. I may need more edge loops than this, but I'm just trying to make this simple. I said, you don't have to get too wrapped up in getting all of the polygons set first. Like I can do something like this and then add more edge loops as I need them through the back of the head here, because I know I'm going to need stuff here. And it all just kind of depends on where you want to finish out that circle. Wherever those edge loops need to go. And then we can use that smooth feature, right, to get that to look right. Smoothing out polygons. Looks like we're doing a good job of picking up all that geo, which is good. That's what we want. That's looking pretty good. I just want to make sure I have enough geometry through these spaces to make sure I'm covering that high level of sculpting that we performed. So it will save. If you want to come back, yeah, you can definitely come back. Like right now, if I were to exit quad draw, you'll see if I turn off the base layer or the head here, it saves those quads that we've drawn, right? So this is what we've done so far, which is kind of cool. You can see what your low poly looks like compared to your high poly, which is pretty cool. Like that's pretty unique and interesting to see how that's functioning. But then you come back to it, you just click on those polygons. You can either keep your head on, just click on those polygons again, go back to the quad draw, and it should turn it back on. As long as you've got that live surface set, it shouldn't have a problem. So yeah, you can definitely use that and come back as often as you need to. Yeah, it definitely makes it nice because this can be a process, right? This could take you an hour or two to really nail this down, get this cleaned up where you want it to be. It's a slow process at first, especially when you first are learning how the keys function and all the different hotkeys, which aren't crazy, but just clicking your point, holding shift and clicking to get that figured out can take a second. Now I'm going to hold tab and just kind of extrude down here. We do it again. Maybe not. Maybe we'll bring this down here a little bit. I just want to make sure I kind of hit that connection point here where the head meets the shoulders. If I need to pull some of this geometry around, I can. Because I can always come back and smooth it. Let's just make sure we have this all kind of accounted for around here. We can add as many edge loops as we need around there. It kind of loop the head a little bit there. I'm just holding shift and scrubbing over the model to get that smoothed out and nice. Just cleaning up that mesh. Then I can start drawing in polygons for things. Sometimes if you need to get a vertex that you just can't get to, you can turn off quad draw for a second. Like here, I just need to get this vertex out of here. And I can go back into quad draw so that I can adjust that. Sometimes it's the angle of which you're looking at something too that can be the biggest issue. So this is again one of those things where I'm like, okay, vertex mode. I'll just force it out for a second, then I'll go back to quad draw. This is kind of where you can decide how much geometry you need over here too. I know I need to get this filled in. So just slowly drawing in these. Like I said, this is a time-consuming process, so take a break if you need to. Don't feel like you have to do this all at once, but I'm just trying to get through the main body of mine, and then I'm going to show a couple of tools inside of ZBrush for those that asked the question earlier about doing hair. I want to get to those and make sure I don't miss that for you guys. That's pretty good through there. There is some stuff I need to do here. Maybe add an edge loop here, which is going to wrap through the head, which I'll have to kind of clean up a little bit through here. When you add edge loops like that, you want to make sure you adjust, because you don't want it to sit way tight through there. Just a random edge loop super tight through that space. It doesn't match up with the rest of the polygons, right? You want your polygons to stay relatively the same size when they're in the same areas, and relatively in the same size around the whole mesh if you can. There are some spots where I have some bigger ones definitely through here, which we can adjust, but necessarily want that to loop through the whole head. So I might come in with my own. Here's where you can do your own deals too. Like I can cut in with my own edge loop through here if I want one, just to give a little bit more detail through some of these spaces. And I can cut in here with my multi-cut tool. Then I can go back to quad draw. And quad draw won't have a problem with that, right? I adjusted that by myself. But now I can do this kind of good stuff. Then that whole edge loop doesn't have to wrap through the chest right there or back through the face, which I don't want it to do. And I can still have the geometry here. Can run another loop through there, potentially too, because I want to make sure I get all of that geometry there to account for this loop that's happening up here. I just want that to be nice and clean if I can get it clean. Sometimes that takes a little bit of manual adjustment on your end too. Okay, so I've done a good chunk here of this head. Let's close in the eyes because I do need to close these up. This can take a little bit of process to do. Just to get these all closed up. Let's see. Here's the other thing I could do is like do a fill hole and then cut in geometry here, but let's see. Or I can do an extrusion out first and then another extrusion. It just depends on how you want to close that up. random little triangle in the eye right there, but that's okay. That's fine. I think that's relatively good right there for right now. We can come back to it if we need to. We'll kind of leave that how it is. Okay. Next one is the mouth here. So I'm going to do my best to close this up. That might require like a extrusion here. And like a little bit of smoothing in here. And then just kind of deciding where to run these loops inside of here. There might be a loop that ends up running through here. I'm not totally sure how that's all gonna close up in here. Let's see, just a second. Goal is just to get it closed more than anything else. That closed up good right there. Hopefully we can do the same thing underneath. Okay, there we go. That's good enough for me for right now. Okay. So there is our lovely head, which is pretty cool, right? So now if I turn off quad draw and turn off the head here, this will be pretty interesting, I think. So we take this in object mode. Here's our head. If I go mesh display soften edge on this, there's the very low poly version of our head, right? This is what will get baked onto the high poly. So we've got the low poly version, right? And then the high poly that kind of sit over top of it. Hopefully we can get that to work just as well. And You'll be in good shape. Okay. So, same process for the rest of this head, right? Complete same process. We can keep going through, and what I might do is if I find some time over the weekend here, I will do my best to get you guys a face or a oh, that's cool. So I had some fun stuff happening there. Mesh merge. Let's turn off Object X here. We have a hidden face going on right here, I think. Okay, so head is done. We can start turning on the rest of the other pieces and continuing to UV those. But I think for this week and for next week, like, focus on getting those done, and then the next step with that is doing the UV portion, right? So we'll need to unwrap this head and put it in its own UV space in the UV editor, right? Which is going to be a process in its own. It's not too bad, but there is a little bit of a process when UVing stuff for a face. There's some ways that you can make a little bit easier on yourself, right? So we'll get to that in just a little bit, but I think for today we can wrap it up here. I do want to show, before we wrap it up, actually, let's talk about some hair tools inside of ZBrush for those that asked the question. So I don't want to leave you guys hanging with that. But as far as the UVing goes, or not UVing, retopoing goes, that's the gist of it, right? And then I just need to keep retopoing the other pieces. So let's go into some hair though for a minute. I'm going to save this really quick though. Save that out. Give it a second to save because it's a pretty big file. Let's talk about some hair stuff, okay? There are some really great tools in order to sculpt hair, okay? I am going to show you some things here that can make it really easy. So let's go to save as, we'll call this final. That's great. Let that save for a second too, because that's a pretty massive file. Okay. Oh, excuse me. So let's start with our sphere here, okay? going to divide this up. There are some tools that make hair sculpting pretty easy, right? So the first one that I would show you is the standard brush. If you take the standard brush, it's the normal baked in standard brush inside of ZBrush, okay? We bump this bad boy up to be fairly big. Might have made this really big without really needing to. Excuse me. Okay, so here's the normal standard brush, right? Let's say we were going to draw some hair. Let me actually do something here too. B and T. Let's just kind of elongate this. Let's say this is some long hair on a character, okay? Right. We'll just kind of shape it as if it's the hair character per minute. Okay. Here's our lovely long hair that we're sculpting. Right? So even so, like really quickly, I've shaped out some hair, right? Let's say we were trying to get the long, elongated portions in the front, right? You have the sides of the hair too that kind of come down. That sit on your character's shoulders or something. There's the front of the hair. We're just kind of pushing and pulling some things around, right? This is the idea with sculpted hair, right? We're sculpting this hair. So we can push and pull areas around that we need, right? So let's append in a sphere just to give us a form of reference here. I'm doing this quickly, but hopefully this is making sense. There's our lovely character's head for a second. Right? So let's jump back to our hair for a second. We're doing something like this, and we've done some work here, right? We're sculpting this around. So there's some things that make this fairly simple. I'm going to bump up the geometry here now to a higher res. There's a tool called the standard brush, right? If I'm trying to do some strands of hair, and this is not the most amazing hair model you've ever seen, right? But hopefully this makes a little bit of sense. But if I go to the standard brush and I bump up the intensity, I can start doing things like this where I'm drawing in strands, and I can even apply a square alpha to this to make, you know, more intense strands. And then I can do the alt side of that brush to really kind of dig things in, and then I can smooth stuff out, right? But I can create those strands of hair and then either turn down with the alt, right? Or build them up. You don't have to be doing this in symmetry either. You could turn off symmetry. You can use that square brush and build those things through. Use the alt side of it. There's also, if you downloaded Shane's brushes, he has the carve tool that does a really good job with hair, right? Where it carves in where it's carving in some of these things for you, right? Carving in these strands. Which really do a nice job there. And depending on where that hair ends up sitting or something on your face, you can really use that to chop some of these things up. And this is not great hair that I'm sculpting right now, but I'm just trying to show how the tool functions, right? But you can easily see how that would help you make, you know, if you've got like a character who has kind of a pompadour looking deal happening, that carved brush really works well through there. So that's sculpted hair, right? If you're sculpting it, it's just using some of these brushes. Standard brush, you can use the damn standard as well. Damn standard does like cuts into things for you. So you can really get in there and kind of create those hard lines on things, okay? In my bust concept 2, I use a little bit different of a brush. So let's turn this off here. And we'll go here. The bust concept 2 is using the hair brushes, okay? And I have some tubes. They are just a modified tube brush. And they live right here somewhere. Where are they at? I have a square tubes, and I have a Mac-on hair brush. Yes, so this is the square tubes brush, okay? The square tubes brush, when you draw with it, you'll see that it's going to create, oh, I gotta do something here. It's going to create a, come on, don't be dumb. So the hair tool brush is going to do something like this, where it can create these strands of hair for you, right? So I'm creating this nice strand, and then I can use that strand and kind of pull it around, or I can move it, right? I can push and pull that thing around and create these strands of hair as I need them, right? So that's kind of how that square brush works. And then you could create multiple versions of that where you're duplicating that around. You can see how that would make, you know, building hair a little easier too, right? If I create a few different versions of this that do this kind of strand deal here. Clear the stroke, I think, or curve. There is a thing here. Where is it at? Under curve. There's one where you have to clear the curve. Delete curve. Okay. Then you can draw another one. You can actually just keep drawing them and it will, you don't have to delete them. But I can create all these different strands, right? That wrap around. I can create them so that they wrap around the head a little bit too. There is something you need to change in here that helps this a little bit. where you can create it so that the curve goes the opposite way. So under stroke, it's under curve modifier. Where is it at? And it's the curve fall off. And all you do is you just change this to the opposite direction. And then when I paint, it's going to go in the opposite way. So now I'm painting with that curve. It's creating that curve that kind of does this type of deal. So I can create some really nice looking hair strands, right? And then once I've done all these, right, then I can group some of them or move some of them around, right? That's one brush, and I can link you to where I got these brushes from. Or there's another brush called the Macon hairbrush that I can show you how to get this one too. And this one's really nice. You can pick how many strokes you want there, and this will do the same thing too. So if I go to stroke, change my fall off here, just to the opposite version of the fall off in the grid. And this one does multiple strands together, which really makes like it really easy to do kind of big chunks of hair together. Right, and create, you know, some interesting stuff that you can then dynamesh together or smooth together and get them all figured out. Every time you're doing this, it's going to create some different things here, but so you can move these around, right? But every time I do these, I can create new kind of strokes and things through here. I can grab different versions of this. I can grab one where it's just one strand, right? And it's creating one strand at a time. It's a great brush too. That Macon one's really nice. It's just a more smoothed kind of tube that it creates. So you can kind of see how that functions, right? Creates all these different strands. Helps with hair, okay? Then think about dynameshing it, smoothing them out a little bit maybe too, or dividing them up, right? If you need to divide those hair strands up to make them a little cleaner. Just however you think you need to do that to make those function properly. So let me link you to both of these pairs of brushes that I grabbed. So the Macon hairbrush, or I can just take them, copy paste them out of my ZBrush folder for you. Let me do that. That's easier. Let's see. So it was the square tubes and the Macon hairbrush, right? So let's copy these. And then I will drop these in the Discord for everybody. So those are both different brushes you can grab and use for hair. Those are pretty helpful. That's how I built the hair on the on that character in the assignment page. So if you look at this, that's how I did my dude's hair here, is with that square tubes brush. Then I just adjusted each square tube, kind of scale. Once I drew the strand of hair, right, kind of modeled it, then I positioned it and scaled it up and kind of moved it around till it looked how I wanted it. right? But that gave me a good starting point. Okay. All right, we've been going for 2.5 hours. Haven't given you a break, so we'll call it here for today. If you have questions or need help with the retopo process, let me or the TAs know. Okay. And then next week we'll just continue kind of wrapping up this process here. We'll finish up our retopo with all the polygons here. The crazy thing is look at this. So we had, our head was 2 million polygons. Now he is 2,500 tries. So that's just how nice and simple it makes building these meshes, right? He's way less expensive now. And then when we bake on that detail, he's going to look just like the 6 million polygon. So that's the process. That's the idea. I'll let you guys go. Have a good rest of your Friday night. Let me know if you need anything from me, okay? I will see you guys next week.